What if I told you that too much communication with men can actually be a bad thing? What if I also told you that sometimes the best communication with men is no communication at all? If that sounds confusing to you, don't worry, because on today's show, we're going to be discussing why men never fall in love with you when you over explain. That way you don't make the mistake of saying more than necessary only to end up receiving less than you deserve. Let's start off with number one. Something that sucks when dealing with men is you're never gonna force them to be able to empathize with you. We're gonna have power. So there is your power and there is the man's power. So for example, let's just say, you really want to let a guy know how he's hurt you and how he's done you wrong, right? And you also want to let him know that despite him hurting you so bad, in the process of you explaining all the different ways he's hurt you and done you wrong, you've still stayed so that he can understand this, he can empathize with your pain, and he can want to do better for you in this relationship. What you don't realize though, is as soon as you do this, you transfer the power that you once had to him. He recognizes instead that you are hurt, but did nothing, which is very bad. It shows him that whatever is happening with him, maybe it's his slong, maybe it's the fact that he's 6'4" and he's got a great smile and he's super charismatic, whatever the case may be. Despite you telling him how badly he's hurt you, nothing has really changed in your relationship, except for you telling him and listing out to him all the different ways that he's hurt you. So then they recognize, okay, you're telling me that you feel bad or you're unhappy in this relationship, but I don't really feel anything different. I just hear your words. So you're thinking, but you hearing my words of how you hurt me, you should hear that and feel bad about the fact that you've treated me bad, about the fact that you've done me so wrong in our relationship. That should affect you and make you realize that it's necessary for you to make a change, okay? Not an uncommon thing to think, but the reason I want to bring this up to all of you is because I see a lot of you making this mistake. Now, it's a fair assumption if that guy was equally as invested in you as you were invested in him. But a lot of times what you'll find is in relationships, and especially in the early stages of dating, you're going to end up finding yourself attached or more invested in men than they are in you. And if you're not properly gauging what another man's level of investment is in you, you can start thinking that over-explaining and over-communicating is the way to get your message across, when all you're doing is communicating to a man that you have a lot of power over me, you have a lot of control over my emotions and how I feel, and despite me feeling badly in this relationship, I still won't leave. This is an exhibit, a direct real-life example of over-explaining. Now, this example that we're going to look at together of over-explaining is coming from our Discord. I don't need you to fit some fairy tale idea of what I think a husband should be. I need the basics Habibi. Habibi just means like my world, my love, right? It's like, it's an expression, it's an Arab term. Laid forth by God. I need a protector, a provider, and I need you to love me as Christ loved the church. Ephesians, it's a Bible verse, okay? That's the chapter and the verse. I'm not asking for the world here. Our communication is limited, AF, now. So when we do have it, we need to take advantage of it. If there's something wrong, I need you to tell me. Now she's going into listing the points of why she's upset and what she's upset about over text. I don't feel loved when you tell me you are going to call me back and I don't hear from you. I don't feel loved when you have the ability to call me now for a short period of time and you choose not to. She then goes on to a third point. Okay, I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation and she's doing one over here as well. I don't feel loved when you have the opportunity to tell me you love me and you don't. This will always be a mistake. Why? Not because you're expressing or communicating what you feel, but especially when you first start dating someone and getting into a relationship with a man, you have to gauge, what is his level of interest in you? What is he willing to do for you or do for this relationship? You also have to be willing to accept that if he's not willing to do that much for you or in the relationship, that's a reflection of how he truly feels about you. And if he truly feels about you that you're not worth actually investing in, then you need to immediately withdraw yourself from that relationship instead of thinking that you're going to be able to save it by over explaining yourself. Okay. Now, this is a very important point and pivotal point here, because you guys see that it says the message got sent on Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Okay. But at the bottom message here, it says there's another message that starts at 5:30 p.m. So about 5 hours after this message was sent. This is Exhibit A Part 2. We're really doing a PowerPoint today. Now, this is actually, as crazy as it sounds, the second part of that message. So in 5 hours, this man, after she sent this whole ordeal and an explanation of how she felt and what she wanted and what she expected, he then responded, right? After 5 hours, he did not respond to her, and she had to send another message. So let's see what she said. I see you made it. Please let me know where I can send your clubs. She's talking about golf clubs that she wants to return to him. There is a UPS close to me. Or if you want me to give them to your cousin or someone that works too. So what she's describing here is that she is realizing he hasn't responded and hasn't said anything about that. So she's addressing returning his golf clubs, right? Hoping maybe that he might respond. His response was, I feel your hostility from over 1,000 miles away. And then he proceeded to do the craziest, most audacious thing I've seen in a while. He actually put the amount of miles it is that he is away from her. So why do I bring this up as an exhibit? To show you guys why over-explaining will never get you where you want to go in a relationship. Because even with her amazing long message, so it sounds like, wow, this is really going to impact him. This is really going to get him. This is really going to shape the way he thinks. This is really going to force him to empathize with me, like I just mentioned in point number 1. But we see here in his response, he actually doesn't feel empathy. He doesn't feel anything at all. In fact, what he feels is the hostility from 1,154 miles away. My point being, you will never get where you want to go in a relationship by trying to over-explain to a man how he's hurt you or what he's done to you. What you're better off doing is realizing that men only see a necessary change to be made when you either withdraw from them or they're no longer experiencing you in the same way that they were before. You're better off allowing men to come to you and then you explain why you have withdrawn from them, okay? But we're gonna get into that for the rest of the show here. Defense mechanism number 2. Now, in point number 2, let's kind of draw ourselves. Let's have in scenario number 1, you explain to a man everything that you think, everything that you feel, how you've been hurt, how he's hurt you, how he's hurt this relationship. You're expecting him to then feel that and then give you in return an apology. Let's look at scenario number 2 here at what really happens. You've got your explanation and in return, he defends himself. See, the actual natural inclination is not for men to immediately just apologize for everything that you're saying that they've done wrong to you. Instead, their natural inclination is to defend themselves against what they consider to be your allegations. Now, this is a very important turning point because, see, when he begins to defend himself, see, you notice that it's kind of like going in a circle here because you can easily get trapped in a wheel where you're explaining what he's done wrong and how he's done it wrong. And instead of him apologizing to you because he actually feels invested in this relationship and he wants your happiness and he wants you to feel good in this relationship, remember, sometimes the men that you're dating won't have the same level of investment as you do or the same type of intentions that you do. So instead, he defends himself. But what does that lead to when he defends himself? You then we'll even put this here, explain why what he did was wrong, how what he did was wrong, and how it has affected you negatively and affected this relationship negatively. So this becomes a vicious cycle of re-explaining and putting down bullet points and writing this story out and writing this paragraph out. And now you're in a cycle where you're constantly explaining and he's constantly defending. He's never thinking to himself, well, gee, you might be right on this, or gee, you might have a point here. Why? Because he's not invested enough in this relationship to actually care about your feelings, or to actually care about making you happy. I tell you guys all the time, a guy who actually likes you and is invested in you and the future of this relationship will care about your happiness. Now, I say that to say a guy that likes you and actually wants to be with you will care about your happiness. So when you actually show signs of discomfort or being unhappy in a relationship with the guy that actually cares about you, then he'll actually take that to heart and want to make a change. But when you're explaining yourself to a man who doesn't care, or you're just unsure if he even cares, or you're explaining what the ways he's shown you that he hasn't been caring, that's a direct sign to you that when you explain to a man who's been showing you he hasn't been caring, all he's going to do is defend himself or give you excuses how what you think is actually wrong. So what does that do for you? It does absolutely nothing for you. And you end up going in circles like this, explaining and re-explaining and explaining and re-explaining. He never gets it, and all he does is defend himself against you and defend his character against you and make excuses for why, you actually didn't perceive it like that. You shouldn't have taken it like that. I didn't actually make this mistake. It was a mistake that you perceived the wrong way. I didn't actually cheat on you. I actually just, fell into her, in between her legs, and then it slipped in because I took a extra Viagra pill that day. It was crazy. You guys ever played this game before with your friends? What would you rather? This is like a version of that, except it's quite more painful. So this is what I want you to understand about men and what I want you to visualize. This is the most important visualization of today's lesson, okay? So let's imagine the man here, and let's imagine a road here that splits off and veers off into two separate paths. Let's imagine that one of these paths here is princess treatment and the other path here is peasant treatment. So there's two different types of paths that men can choose in their relationships with you. They can either treat you like a princess, which just means treat you well, care about you, care about this relationship, or they can treat you like a peasant. Your job is not to force the men that you're dating to choose either one of these paths. I want you listening very close. You are not in the business of taking a man, holding his hand, and trying to get him all the way to this part of the road. That is not your job. You're going to be over here observing, right? You're going to be watching, right, with your eyes, what he does. He's going to go down this road, and eventually at some point, he's going to have to pick a direction to go. And once he picks that direction, all you continue to do is observe where he decides to go. Why do I say this? Because it's so important to understand, what would that man rather do? Would he rather treat you like a princess because he cares about you and wants this relationship with you? Or would he rather treat you like a peasant because he doesn't care that much and it doesn't matter if you're happy in this relationship? The reason for that is you do not, this is going to be the scariest thing. We're going to talk about this even later. You do not want to end up in a relationship that is built off of you holding his hand and trying to force him to treat you like a princess. If you build a relationship like that, right, you will constantly have to do that in order to maintain the relationship. Whereas if you sit back, relax, and allow him to show you which one he would rather do, and he ends up choosing princess treatment, now you can ensure that for the rest of your relationship, you can take a hands-off approach and allow him to treat you how he was always going to treat you, how he always wanted to treat you. And now you don't have to run around like a chicken with your head cut off and do everything in your power to get him to go here. Are you following me? But you have to, in order to do that, sit back, relax, and observe and let men show you where they're going to go. So how does this relate to over-explaining? When you over-explain to men, you're doing the hand-holding, okay? It sounds like communication at first, but then you can easily spiral into telling him, I don't like this, you don't take me out, you don't take me on dates, you don't treat me nice, you disrespect me, you show up late, you flop, you never... And at a certain point, it's no longer communication. You're literally just showing him how he's actually treating you like a peasant. But remember, I told you the men don't empathize with you because you force them to empathize with you. When you show him how much he's treating you like a peasant, all he says is, cool, I'm glad you can list out the 35 different ways that I treat you like a peasant. Are you going to do anything about it, or you're just going to continue creating PowerPoints? Because PowerPoints don't make me feel bad about it. PowerPoints don't make me feel like I need to change. And truthfully, if it was really that bad for you, why don't you just leave? That's really, and this is going to be the saddest part, that's really the question that men are asking themselves when you do all of this over explaining with your bulletproof points and your PowerPoint presentation of what he's doing wrong. They ask themselves, I mean, if it's really that bad, then why don't you just walk away? And you're thinking, well, I'm a ride or die. I'm here because I want to communicate and I want to tell you how I feel and I want to show you how bad. Is it bad or is it not bad? Are you okay or are you not okay? Because if it's really that bad, then you should just walk away. And that's really how the men think when you do all of that over explaining, which is exactly why they only think it's necessary to make a change when they realize that you've actually made the decision to walk away. And once he shows you what he would rather do, that's all you need to observe to get your answer of how he feels about you. And once you get your answer of how he feels about you, you respond accordingly and you withdraw yourself. Not worry yourself, not, go crazy or go insane trying to get him to see the light, okay? You're never gonna get men who don't see the light with you or see your value or see your importance in their life to see the light. It's not gonna work. They're either gonna see it and they're gonna act on it or they won't. And if they don't, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that he chose this road. That's not representative of you. Take notice of the fact that this man is on this road by himself. He makes his own choice when he gets to this pivotal point. That's his choice. So number 4. So let's imagine here, you got all of these different coworkers here. And all of your different coworkers at your job, they all use their cell phone at work. And when you come in and you start working at that job, you immediately see that literally everyone at that job uses their cell phone at work while they're working in their spare time, even when they're on the clock supposed to be doing important stuff, even though they're not supposed to. So tell me, if you come to a job and you notice that everyone else is using their cell phone, tell me in the chat, are you going to use your cell phone as well? Or are you gonna say, no, I'm a good worker. I'm a good worker, B. I'm gonna be the one who stays off my phone because the boss said it's not part of the rules and I know that I wanna follow the rules and be a good worker. For most of us, if we come to work and we see all of our other coworkers are using their cell phones too, we're gonna say, hey, I'm not gonna be different than you. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm using my cell phone as well. And let's imagine a couple weeks goes by and you're at that job, you're using your cell phone just like everyone else at your work. Now let's imagine that one day your boss comes in and he's observing everything that's going on. And this day your boss comes in, he's really, really angry. And he sees one of your coworkers on their cell phone while they're supposed to be completing a really important project that's already delayed. And he yells at your coworker, he says, Steven, I told you about using your cell phone at work. You've got an important project to do and it's already delayed and you're sitting here scrolling through Instagram. You're fired! And your coworker gets fired on the spot right in front of you. He gets his key card taken, no compensation package, no nothing, all right? He's on LinkedIn the next day. Are you gonna continue using your cell phone at work? Or are you gonna think to yourself, yeah, I'm probably gonna put the phone away now. So this is the really important part about this and why I wanna kind of tie this back to men and how they think. See, the same way, even though men come into relationships with you and they have a vague understanding of the rules of a relationship, right? I should be loyal to her, I should treat her right, take her out on dates, be courteous, be kind, all that good stuff that we see in movies and things like that. So similar to you, right? You understand the rules of your work and what you're supposed to be doing, right? And in this scenario, right, in this analogy, the rule that you're not supposed to use your cell phone. But here's the problem. When you get into the work, you're still gonna kind of feel things out to see what's really allowed and what's not allowed. Because rules, yeah, they might be rules, but not all rules are necessarily implemented or, actually have consequences. So it's the same thing for the men. They get into relationships having an understanding of what they're supposed to do, but even when they get into the relationship, they're still feeling things out to see if there's really gonna be any consequences for their actions. So in this scenario, the man is you. And see, here's the really interesting thing about the analogy that I just gave you and why I asked you guys those particular questions. See, you were only affected in this scenario of not using your cell phone when you watched your coworker get fired for using their cell phone. But the thing about it is, that was always a rule at your workplace, right? It never stopped being a rule. It just you only decided to make a change when you actually saw that there were real consequences for using your cell phone at work. And the same way, the men realize that eventually when they're meeting you and they're talking to you, that it's only necessary to make a change when they actually see some people get fired, when they actually see that there's consequences if they don't meet your standards or expectations. And when they don't see any reason to make a change, when they don't see any consequences for treating you badly, because remember, they're still feeling stuff out, seeing what they can get away with, they then realize, oh, I can do what everyone else is doing, which is not take this relationship seriously, right? When he sees that you allow other people to take advantage of you and walk all over you, when he sees that you're a people pleaser, when he sees that, when he hears from you, when you talk about your past relationships and how you allowed all your exes to take advantage of you, it's like showing him how all the coworkers use their cell phone at work, even though they're not supposed to. And no one gets fired for this. So then they decide, well, I'm just going to treat her horribly and I'm not going to get fired either. So my point being is you have to understand, for men, they don't hear words. And every time you're over explaining yourself to those men, it's just going in one ear and out the other. So anytime you actually want to make them feel something, or actually want to, make them focus on something that is important to you or important to make a change about in your relationship, focus on what action you can take in order to have him recognize, oh, there's something actually different here. Whether your energy is off, you've withdrawn a little bit from me, you're not as invested in me, I can feel a difference in the way you treat me, you are ignoring me, whatever it may be, right? And when they feel that withdrawal from you, when they feel that coldness for you, that's like getting a coworker fired, right? And right in front of them, that they can see, oh, this is actually not going to work. There's actually rules here. There's actually consequences here, okay? So anytime you're thinking about sending that long message, I want you to erase that message. And instead, I want you to go to your notes app and I want you to start typing out, what things can I show him in terms of my action or the way that I withdraw myself that will allow him to see that this particular behavior I do not appreciate or like. Fifth point here, wheel of misfortune. Let's say you guys are here in your relationship. You come around here and you eventually get here to where he makes some sort of, he does you wrong in some way. And when he does you wrong and mistreats you, whether it's, you don't feel loved by him in our example here or our exhibit here, or whether it's because he's been ignoring you, whether it be because he hasn't been messaging you as much as you're used to, or calling you, or keeping his word, whatever it may be, right? He wrongs you in some way. This is the really pivotal point here that I want you to kind of grasp and understand its importance, okay? See, you do your over explanation at this point, which is very, very pivotal, okay? And I don't want you to do, and we're gonna kind of reverse this for you. And at this point, when you do your over explanation of how you feel and what you want and what you expect, in the process of you over explaining, you can also end up begging for him to treat you right. Now, this is very interesting, okay? And this is why I call it a wheel of misfortune. Because for some of you that do this over explaining, you'll get him to treat you right. And you'll be like, oh, well, Tomisin has no idea what he's talking about, because the guy that I like and that I want, when I over explain to him, he actually is doing something different now. And he actually he took it in and he made a change and all that good stuff. And so now, once he treats you right, you're back in your relationship. Here comes the horror story. This is the problem though. You've now created a wheel of misfortune, where in order for you to get here after he wrongs you, you have to do a whole bunch of over explaining and begging just to get him to understand why you're upset and how he needs to treat you right again. So you want to know what happens when something goes wrong in your relationship again? Rather than him saying, oh, I actually want to fix this because I see you're unhappy, you need to go back to over explaining and begging like a peasant in order to get him to treat you right again. And each time you go through this wheel, this relationship, so let's just pretend like right here we say, we'll put happy here. Let's say each time you're able to sustain this happy relationship, it's short-lived for a shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter amount of time each time. And every time you go back to another wronging, once again, you have to do a whole bunch of over-explaining and begging just to get him to treat you right for a little bit, just so you can be in a happy relationship for a little bit. And you create this cycle where in order for your relationship literally to exist, for your relationship to just be maintained, you have to, on an ongoing cycle, be doing a whole bunch of over-explaining and begging for the bare minimum to occur in your relationship just for you to be in some sort of a happy relationship. The problem with that, and the problem with this wheel of misfortune, is while you might have some happy times, it's completely unsustainable. Because in order for you to return to a homeostasis, right, in order for you to return to your happy relationship, you have to do begging and over-explaining every single time. There's no accountability, and he has built no muscle memory, as we can say, of being able to identify, oh, I should not treat my woman like this. I should treat her like this. I should put my best foot forward. I should take care of this. I shouldn't have to make it a problem and have her beg for more and beg for something different in our relationship in order for me to change. I should actually just change those things. I should actually just adjust myself. I should actually be wanting this relationship to be better for the both of us and for her as well in her happiness and her sanity, that she doesn't have to beg me for those things. I just do them. And so you can end up in a place where the only reason you're able to be in this relationship still is by continuing to do this all the time. And you'll be very miserable, very unhappy, and very exhausted and very emotionally drained. Because every time you do this, you'll feel like you're pulling teeth. You'll feel like you're wasting your breath or saying the same thing over and over again. You'll feel like you're having deja vu, talking about the same points of the same things that you feel he's not giving you. And you want to know what the worst part is? The men will be asking themselves, not, oh, I'm such a bad person that why did I treat her that way? They'll be asking themselves, why did she just not leave?